It's like Y2K all over again in the UK. Stockpiling of food and medicine is rampant in anticipation of potential shortages if a deal isn't reached before the Brexit deadline at the end of this month. Steve Smith is among those taking these measures, and he joins me now from London with more. Steve, thanks so much for being here today. Why is there so much concern that the UK could face shortages of supplies after leaving the EU?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, really. I mean, why are we doing this here? We're a G7 country in peacetime. You know, we shouldn't be doing this. But to explain why we're worried about medicines and food and potentially water, you have to think, first of all, for food. The UK is not self-sufficient in food. Quite famously, you know, we during the war we brought food in from across the Atlantic. We currently rely on the EU for about 30 to 40% of our food. 60% of our fresh food comes in from the EU. Now, that comes in over a transport link, and the transport link is basically the channel, Calais-Dover. It's about 20 miles. Most stuff comes across that. So you're talking about food, you're talking about medicines, you're talking about car parks, chemicals for water purification, pretty much anything that we might be importing, whether it's from the EU or even potentially from the rest of the world. So a lot of stuff goes through Rotterdam. Now, our own UK border force estimates that the capacity of that link might drop by up to 87%. So you can imagine we go from 100% down to about around the 10% mark in terms of capacity there. And you think, well, why might that happen? Or why might the cross-channel link shrink so much? And you think about it at the moment, we're in the single market and customs unit. Right, you can take goods from Germany to the UK as easy as you guys might take goods from Toronto to Montreal. Yeah. It's as easy as that. You just take a truck and then just drive it, roll on Ronroth Ferry, dead easy. If we crash out in a crash-out Brexit, or they like to call it no deal, we'll need to establish customs points on both sides of that border.
And that slows things down. That creates a choke point, right? And so a lot of this
Absolutely.
food will spoil before it ever gets to where it's going to go. So Steve,
we don't have facilities.
I want to talk about that, but I want to move on as well, because I understand for foodstuffs why that's vital. But you brought up medicine as well. How does putting up a hard border slow down or give people issues when it comes to medicine?
So once again, our medicine comes across that link. Comes in trucks across that link. So if that link's cut down to 10% of the size it actually is right now, then everything's going to be queuing. Now, we understand the government's going to put medicines as #1 priority, as you'd expect for going across the border. But, you know, that still leaves a potential bottleneck there, because everybody's going to want to push their stuff all across there. Every industry, you know, restaurants, whatever you can think of, going to use that. So we really don't know how that's going to be fulfilled. We understand that the NHS is stockpiling for 6 weeks, but beyond that period, we don't know. Well,
Steve, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We'll be watching what happens across the pond with great intent, so thanks for your insights today.